So in this video, we're going to study ionic bonding. Before we talk about what an ionic bond is, let's talk about what an ion is. If you remember from the atom chapter, an ion is just an atom with a charge. So an ionic bond is the type of bond that's going to be forming when an element that has a positive charge called a cation combines with an element that has a negative charge called an anion. And the other important thing here is that electrons are going to be completely transferred. The goal of an ionic bond is for the electron cloud to have a valence of 8 electrons. Another name for that is an octet. Okay, so we're going to talk about some things about positive ions here. So positive ions are elements that lose electrons to obtain that 8 valence electrons. So sometimes people find that to be confusing, but think about it. If you have positive protons and negative electrons, your overall charge is going to be positive if you've lost electrons, which are negative. Positive ions are called cations. Some people will pronounce that cations. They're mainly going to be metals from the periodic table. Metals in the periodic table is going to be all of group 1 and 2, which means column 1 and 2. It's going to be all of the transition metals. That's going to be that block in the middle. And then some of group 13. So let's talk about negative ions and their qualities here. So negative ions are going to be elements that gain electrons. So they're going to gain a negative charge to fill their valence. They're going to be called anions. One way that people remember these two terms, and this only works if you guys have these characteristics, but some people like cats and they remember cations are positive because they like cats, and some people don't like onions and they say anions, yuck, onions. It doesn't quite work exactly, but kind of goes together. Negative ions are mainly nonmetals from the periodic table. Those groups or columns from the periodic table include group 15, 16, and 17. So column 15, 16, and 17. Now, we're not going to go into the specific electron configuration and how to figure that out. We skipped that chapter just to move on, but you should know that the way the electrons are configured for an ion will look like the noble gas closest to it. Okay, we're going to talk about properties of ionic compounds. So ionic compounds form a crystal lattice. What that means is the positive and negative charges are going to alternate and it's going to form a crystal. So if you looked at a piece of sugar or a piece of salt underneath a microscope or like a magnifying glass, it would look like a crystal. Ionic bonds are held together by electrostatic forces. That just means they're held together by the attraction of the positive and negative charges. They're very brittle. They're going to shatter with little force. They have high melting points. They have high boiling points. They dissolve easily, and another word for that is they are soluble. And another word for them are salts. We're going to stop there in this first video to make it a little shorter, and in the next video we'll talk about nomenclature.